All right, hello, this is the Kubernetes community meeting. It is Thursday, September 29th, and I am recording this since Sarah is not here. I'm playing the Sarah for tonight's performance. And our this will be posted publicly after the meeting on a YouTube channel. So don't say anything that you don't want the world to see, and Rob, don't share anything on the screen that you don't want the world to see.
I will make note of that and start pulling things down. Let's see.
And while we wait for a few more people to fill in, let me just do a quick read through the agenda so everybody knows what's coming up. We're going to have a demo of Rob's stuff with digital rebar. And you know, Rob's been instrumental on the cluster ops SIG and a whole bunch of other things, and so I'm looking forward to seeing the world through his eyes. We're going to do a little bit of call out on 1.4 and sort of what's happening there, and then we're going to talk 1.5 planning and do a few notices and SIG updates and stuff like that. So hopefully it should be. I'm not quite sure how we're going to break down the time, but we'll try to get to all of this stuff. Rob, how long do you think your demo is going to take?
I was planning 10 minutes.
Okay.
Usually what the thing is.
So I'll keep you to 15 minutes.
That'd be awesome. All
right. So I think we're pretty much at full strength here. Let's give it another couple of minutes, and then we'll go ahead and start.
Okay. Did my screen share work? Just so we don't.
I was able to see you. It looked clear to me, so at least it'll show up on the recording.
Awesome.
The way Zoom works is I think it sees whatever I see.
Awesome. That sounds perfect. All right. Yeah, I will do this.
Oh, and Jason here signed up to take notes. Thank you, Jason. I will go ahead and, if I can figure out how, give you edit rights so you can just go ahead and. Jason, if you could somehow, oh, there we go. Ha ha ha. You're way ahead of me. All right. All right. Well, great. So it's 3 minutes past. We have 41 participants. And let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with a demo from Rob and Greg. Is Greg online too, Rob?
No, Greg got pulled into a customer site.
All right. So from Digital Rebar, so Rob's from RackN, and going to be demoing Digital Rebar, which is their open source sort of complement here. And what we have here is visual multi-infrastructure deploy with automated PKI.
Right.
So take it away, Rob. Can you do your screen share, and we'll make sure we see that? Awesome.
There you go. You should have it. Excellent. So yeah, Digital Rebar is an open source project that, boy, we've been working on bits and pieces of for quite a while. And its goal is really to do composable operations. So we break big operations toolchain into very small parts. And what we're showing for this is the Kubernetes work we did. And we've shown some Kubernetes in the past where we just took an Ansible playbook, the cargo stuff specifically, and just ran that. In this case, we looked at Kelsey's Kubernetes the hard way, and we said, wow, that's really cool. Let's do that. And so what we did was we call it composite, KOMPOS 8. And so we broke those steps into small units, and then we automate those small units. And so I'm going to walk you through, this is the rack and UX in front of Digital Rebar. I'm going to actually do a Kubernetes wizard to install on Google. I already have one running in Amazon, so we'll jump to that in a second. But it's going to go through, I'll pick Google as my provider, so I could pick different providers like OpenStack or Packet or Amazon or Metal. From a wizard perspective, these are just some of the things that we're exposing, like what version of Kubernetes you want to pull down if you want to actually check checksum, so you could use an experimental version. All sorts of stuff. I'll show you there's actually a lot more settings available. And then we're building a simple cluster. So in this case, 1 control, 3 workers, and then you could actually switch different networking models. So we're working on plugging in, right now it's Flannel and no SDN, but you could plug in Calico or Contrail or something else. The way the orchestration works, it's perfectly acceptable to substitute blocks of function. But I'm just going to take the defaults and move through. And then the wizard doesn't do anything except build this JSON file. The JSON file is designed for you to create a repeatable infrastructure or a CI/CD infrastructure for a Kubernetes deployment. We can deploy other things too. I won't name them because you would consider them like farming competitive. Although, never mind, I'm not even going to go there. Anyway, so here's the JSON file, the attributes I wanted, where I'm deploying it, the nodes. I'll hit next here, and the system's going to take that JSON template against our REST API, and it's going to build out this deployment. And so that deployment is going to include the instructions to get nodes from Google, then start the Kubernetes deployment in this visual composable way. It's also going to build a root PKI, a root certificate, and then it's going to actually build public and private keys on a node-by-node basis as it deploys, which I will show you in just a moment. So I have the AWS one I pre-baked. Here's the Google one. It's requesting 4 nodes. Somewhere in here I actually have my compute engine running. And it'll start spinning those nodes out in just a minute or two. Whoops. And all right. And so this is the visual part of the Kubernetes deployment. So remember, we took these Kubernetes the hard way. So here's our 4 nodes. And then these are all the steps that are necessary to build the Kubernetes cluster. So a couple of them are just doing things like inventory and package management. Building the certificate infrastructure, so a root, signed certs, then installing etcd, then going through and building Flannel agent, installing Docker, but notice we only install Docker on the worker nodes. So we basically build all the steps through. We'll install the API server and kubectl, scheduler, and one of the things that we think is really important here is that you can see exactly what's going where in the infrastructure, and it's very unit by unit stuff. And we made a specific decision with this to use systemd and Go binaries. So we're not using static manifests, we're not doing self-hosted. We just felt from an operational perspective that this was simple, repeatable, multi-OS, very portable, because in our experience, when somebody looks at a deployment like this, they want to be able to point their finger to exactly what happened where. And what you'll see going on is the system is behind the scenes literally doing the work, and we can see it point by point conducting those operations. So if I was to drill into, this one's not going to be as interesting, but I can come in and I can see exactly what's happening at each step. And that would include when we get into the actual Kubernetes deployments, it'll include those pieces. So if I come back in here, there's my AWS one is already finished. If I look at that, this is what a fully complete matrix would look like. This node is my control node. And I can take any one of these steps. I could look at, this is where we installed the scheduler. It's just Ansible. I'll show you the Ansible in just a second. And then I can take this from this node, I can go in, it actually is running here, and then I can do something like uploading a guestbook app. Where's my guestbook? And I'm not going to have quite enough time in the demo to have everything coming in the end, but you can actually see it running. It's a live Amazon, in this case Amazon. The deployment that I'm doing now is going to produce a comparable experience out of a Google, and I could then do the same thing with Metal or OpenStack or other platforms. the composition that we did is Ansible. So it's still an Ansible set of playbooks. The difference is we're using digital rebar to orchestrate them. So if you were to look at the API server install, right, still follows all Ansible stuff, but it's very short and simple because it only installs the API server. The things that do CNI configurations or storage configurations or certificate, those are all in their own isolated pieces from that perspective. So you can go in, this is all open source stuff, it's Apache 2 license, you can modify these pieces, you can change, you can add extra, you could actually, instead of making the API server more complex, we have a demo, trying to be respectful for time, but you could go into a working deployment, like my Amazon one. I could switch it into editable mode. I can add in something like a Deis capability in here, and then I can then have my worker, if I pick Deis here, sort of fun, I can come in, I can say, oh, I want to add Deis to the controller. I can tell it to go, and the system will come back and add Deis into the infrastructure. So it's going to go find new work and add that capability into the infrastructure. It'll do all that building and work. Joe, I want to be sensitive for time, so.
Yeah, and I also want to, save a few minutes for questions here.
Yeah.
Do folks have questions?
Yeah. Can people mute if they're not?
Yeah, mute if you don't have a question. Otherwise, we're just going to assume that you're about to talk. Well, I'll start. So this is interesting, Rob, because one of the things that we've been actively talking about in the lifecycle, clustered lifecycle, is moving more towards self-hosting and Bootkube, and essentially use Kubernetes to manage Kubernetes. And it seems like you're explicitly going the other direction, which I think is not wrong. It's just, I think, a little bit surprising, and it's going to have some impact in terms of other tooling that we do.
And we have a lot of experience from the OpenStack on OpenStack mess, to put it politely. We're really excited about Kubernetes and its ability to manage and sustain applications. From our perspective, we have the tools to just build exactly what Kelsey says you need to build in a secure way, something that's very operationally transparent. Even with the self-hosted stuff, we're still talking about isolated control planes and all those pieces. And so when I look at the best way to accelerate Kubernetes adoption, it's simple operational controls, easy networking, easy storage, right? Remove all the complexity from the install. And so, yeah, our operational experience building platforms is that platform underlays is that the simpler you can make it, the faster it is to adopt. And so, yeah, you're right, Joe. I am, down a different path from the way lifecycle has gone, and I gave up on trying to influence that.
Okay, well, that's interesting, and I think one of the notes that Clayton put in the chat is that I think there are a lot of pragmatic concerns there, and it's a journey, and
oh yeah,
I think the proof is in the pudding, so we'll have to sort of see how this stuff plays out. But it does, I think it just goes to show that we can't assume that Kubernetes is going to be deployed any one way, not until at least we've proven that it's so fundamentally better that people choose to go that way.
And there's a lot of things in lifecycle that I think are very beneficial to what we're doing, and we're excited to see, because anything that makes Kubernetes itself easier to install is great. Our experience has been that, right, especially because part of what we do is metal right out of the box, right? So you have to deal with networking interfaces and which NIC you have, and building storage and prepping a system and making sure that you can patch it individually. And self-hosted, it's going to have to, you have to cross all those things, and a lot of them are Kubernetes concerns.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think that's one of the things that with life cycles that we at least want to do, start at a certain level, and there's a whole bunch of work under that. So first of all, so very cool. One last thing is that, how do you handle do you handle management or deployment of things on top of the Kubernetes cluster once the Kubernetes cluster is up? Because that doesn't necessarily map to a node or an Ansible playbook, because those things are so node-centric.
Yeah, I didn't show this in the demo. So this is actually all the configuration items that we're exposing. Fundamentally, the way we look at the system is it's a cluster. And so the row of icons that I just typed on for this are cluster level services, and the cluster itself is a cluster level service. So it is entirely possible to then add other things into a deployment, especially from, it's all RESTful APIs. It's just an Angular app. So with a RESTful API, go in and say, tell me the cluster information about this deployment, and then take actions against it. And you can do that, like the dashboard here is something inside that deployment, or you could reach in and get the capabilities of the deployment if you wanted.
Okay, so you kind of model it as going to the control node, but at least in the visualization, but really it's going to the cluster as a whole.
Right, if I had a couple of control nodes, I could do that, or if I needed to add more nodes, yeah, it knows it's a cluster. The thing we haven't done yet is do all the DNS integrations, cloud-specific DNS integrations. So like, we don't yet, we're aware of which cloud we're deploying into, but we haven't done the work. And this is community stuff. So we would love to see people who want to collaborate on getting those DNS integrations done, taking advantage of, oh, wait a second, these guys already did all of the base. I want to add I want to plug in functionality in the middle of a Kubernetes deployment. Yeah. And that's exactly what our design is for. It's to say, look, if you need to take action in between the API server and the controller coming up, or I want to substitute NavOps was doing this, a different controller. The way it's designed is you could actually say this controller is equivalent to the default one, and you could substitute in a controller and run the deployments just fine. So the logic assumes that you have alternatives in this workflow, because in physical infrastructure, right, you swap one brand of gear for another brand of gear, you actually have to take different steps. And so that philosophy carries all the way through this, right? That's why, we decomposed it like this, because we know in community, you're going to say, hey, you know what? I don't want Docker, I want Rocket. So I want to create an alternate set of roles that do that. Instead of it polluting the Ansible pieces, or sorry, the whole Ansible playbook, it's just a swap of one role for another.
So I hate to interrupt you, but we got to do a time check here. Awesome demo. There's a couple of questions in the chat that we're not going to have time to get to. Rob, can you contact info, the best way to get a hold of you in the notes, and folks can always check that and follow up offline with you.
Will do. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the demo, sir. All right. So let's see. So the next item on the agenda here is to really, first of all, 1.4 is out the door. Thank you, everybody. It was an amazing effort, and it's awesome to see so much come together from so many different people across different time zones and companies, and it really is what makes the community. So that is very, very exciting to see that happen. There's a retrospective scheduled on Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And Jason Dumars will be facilitating that again.
Can we get somebody to mute, please?
Hunt the noise on the thing here. Yeah. All right, I think we're good. Yeah. So I'm sorry. So Jason will be facilitating there. Thank you, Jason. And then also anybody who you think went above and beyond to help get 1.4 out the door. There's the Kubernetes Community Award. Please send nominations or any feedback on that to Sarah, and she'll collect and drive that process, which is super exciting. So please send that out. It's big part about building the community is actually recognizing folks who are really going above and beyond. And this isn't just code. This is all sorts of different things. And I'm not going to name names because I don't want put my thumb on the scale at all. Okay, so next topic here. Any comments on 1.4 before we move on? Nope. All right, great. The next topic here is 1.5 planning, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different sort of mini presentations to go over here. So we're going to have to be a little bit fast going through this. The first one here is we have SIG-Node from Derek, and let's try and keep these things to like 5-ish minutes each, and see how that works. Derek, are you around?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, so I don't have like a set of slides or anything to talk through, but I'll give themes that SIG-Node has been discussing and give a little details. So for SIG-Node, we're kind of breaking things out by certain high-level themes. The first area that we're tackling is around improving our runtime portability and firming up the container runtime interface and getting basically all of the necessary I's dotted and T's crossed to support multiple runtimes going through there. I would say that admittedly there's still some back and forth on the scope of what's needed to make that alpha in 1.5, but we're working through that. The community is still working on trying to improve overall node EDE test coverage. We did a lot in 1.4, but we're looking to do even more in 1.5. From a node upgrade standpoint, there's some people that are looking to tackle how to do in-place updates of the kubelet. And in addition, how to make it easier to set up your node using some dynamic config. The work around AppArmor support enhancements is still moving forward. And let's see, when it comes to resource provisioning, we're trying to get the support for per pod level C groups in place this release at an alpha level. For node reliability, there's 2 things we're looking to do here. We're trying to improve the responsiveness of the existing eviction agent to observe memory pressures. And then we're also looking to add support to better understand which nodes are consuming all of your, or which containers are consuming all of your inodes, so that we can more accurately reclaim inodes when they're under pressure. We're looking to move the concept of a init container to GA. And let's see, from a security isolation standpoint, at least here at Red Hat, we're interested in getting user namespace support being something that you can turn on in your container runtime by default. Some folks from the community are looking to further evolve GPU support. There's an effort going on across SIG-Node and SIG scheduling to improve your ability to support opaque integer resources. I would say I describe this like making sure the node doesn't overwrite what it reports as capacity for opaque integer resources, but we're not doing anything in isolation around those things in 1.5. And then the last 2 areas would be around making the interactions between the kubelet and the API server secure by default. And yeah, I think that kind of highlights the top level items. Any questions on those themes or anything help?
So there was so a couple of notes. Thank you, Derek. So first of all, I put a link to the notes in the chat window. If you could go through, I mean, there was a long, pretty dense list. If you could go through.
I was literally reading my spreadsheet. I forgot to share. I will give a link to the spreadsheet that we've been externalizing within SIG-Node, and you can see the full 29 items I summarized.
And then there was a question in the chat about removing init containers. I think it was maybe a little bit hard to hear. So what's happening with init containers?
Yeah, we're not removing them. We're looking to actually promote it to GA.
Okay. So actually make them supported.
Yes.
And then another question of will the CRI allow workloads other than containers?
I'm assuming that means can the CRI be backed by things like Hyper potentially? I believe the answer there is yes, but we're still working through some of the edge details around that for things like the monitoring and metrics pipeline that be associated with that.
Okay.
And I think some of these items are what falls under the what makes this an alpha level API or not. In general, we're just trying to push the ball forward here, and there may be edges.
Yeah, and one of the questions there was like QEMU, KVM, but then also a question of binaries. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the big sticking point there is networking, right? Kubernetes has chosen not to do sort of port assignment and enforcement. And so that becomes one of the sticky points there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that the CRI has been a really good exercise in trying to understand what decisions that were made by default that we should revisit now. And I would just say that it's been a rather extensive process to understand everything that we've already settled on in that process. So it's an exercise. So,
all right, very cool. All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Derek. I appreciate it.
Yep.
So the next up is the cluster lifecycle SIG. Luke, I know, had like 2 slides. And an intro slide. So if we want to go over that real quick, Luke.
Yeah, sure. Can everyone see my screen?
I can, so I hope everybody else can.
Okay, can you still see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Great, yeah. So the 3 slides, including the front slide. So we released kubeadmin with 1.4, which we believe is like a big step forwards in terms of making Kubernetes easy to install. There's I won't go over everything that's in the blog and the getting started guide, but please give it a go and give us feedback and tell your friends. And yeah, we really want to iterate on kubeadmin quickly to make it even better. So. And additionally, it's designed to be easy to automate. So if you have your own automation for setting up Kubernetes already, and you can try integrating kubeadmin into that, it should simplify the amount of work that you need to do. So Rob, it would be interesting to see how many fewer steps your setup system needs to take if it were to use kubeadmin, for example. So just interesting sort of thought experiment there. So Joe asked me to speak a little bit about what's next. So this isn't a complete list of everything that we're going to do next. We haven't had another SIG since the release, and we were all pretty much hands to the pumps for the in the last meeting. So, but we have a few ideas on the table. So the first thing we want to do, of course, is react to user feedback and improve on what we've already got. So, for example, we'd like to support more distributions. We currently support only Ubuntu Xenial and CentOS 7. We've already had people show up in Slack and say, hey, it would be really cool if this worked on Trusty. And I said, okay, awesome. Do you want to work on that? And they said, yes. So that's really nice. So yeah, please get involved, and we can try and point you in the right direction. Then sort of the 3 big areas that we want to work on in the future, and I don't know if these are all going to make it by 1.5, but these are the sort of the areas that we're looking at. The first one is high availability, so being able to deploy multiple masters, have multi-node etcd for extra resiliency, etc. And this is actually kind of hairy as a problem, but it'll be interesting to get our teeth into that and try and tackle that. The other aspect is upgradability. We want to make it possible for people who've installed clusters with kubeadmin to easily upgrade to the next release of Kubernetes. And there are lots of different ideas for the ways to solve this. Self-hosting is one of the ways that this can be solved, and so there will surely be much discussion and lively debate about these things, and I'm sure we'll drive to a good solution. And then the last one is configurability. So we're already seeing quite a lot of flags in kubeadmin init, and it's plausible that to imagine that you might want to control pretty much every aspect of every component in Kubernetes that can be configured via these flags, and we don't want to end up with like a massive list of 5 pages of flags, because that would be a bad user experience. So we're also looking at ways that we can sort of manage that complexity, and one example would be to give kubeadmin a config file. So that's my very short update. So please get involved if you have opinions, want to contribute, and thanks very much.
And just to put a little bit of color on that, I think there are some questions sort of long term. I think it's safe to say that the goal out of kubeadmin is to essentially have a full lifecycle tool that really makes it easy to bring up and upgrade and maintain clusters, and to do in a way that is the common parts across lots of infrastructure. to minimize the amount of duplication across various technology stacks. So that's kind of what we're looking for there. Hopefully we can actually make some significant progress in 1.5. All right, great. Thank you, Luke. That's awesome. The next one we have is, any questions on that before we go?
There was one question in the chat about SE Linux. We have a build that I think is actually up already. So if you pull the latest build, you shouldn't need to disable SE Linux.
All right, and then some questions on finding the docs and making sure they're up to date. So yeah, so docs are a big part of this, and very much like as you go through this is going to be some of the stuff that users are going to hit early on. If you see typos, if you see like it's hard to find stuff, if you think that there's information that's missing, please file an issue, let us know, submit a PR. That's very important part of this experience.
I had one other question, which is it cross-platform right now? In the sense of like, if I take this to my Raspberry Pi cluster, is it going to work?
Well, I
was gonna try it, but then I figured I'd just ask.
So Lucas in the SIG has worked tirelessly to make sure that it works on his Raspberry Pi cluster. So I think we did manage to land ARM and ARM64 builds.
All right, I will give it a try tonight then.
So yeah, please give it a try. I'm not sure if WeaveNet supports ARM yet, so you might need to use something else for networking.
Well, I use very manual. I have a dumb switch on top. I use the route command.
Very good.
So one interesting thing though that I did notice, and I don't know if people are talking about this as we're doing kubeadmin, is that it will. Oh God, I'm trying to remember. It will launch a daemon set for the proxy on one for each of the architectures that it might want to support. So there's this question of like, do we want to support heterogeneous architectures in the same cluster? Which is, it
seems like
I don't think anybody's really tested or thought about that too deeply yet, or maybe.
Well, I think the answer to that is clearly yes, right? Not just architectures, but actually
platforms. Yeah.
Well, just as a concrete example, the Windows work that Apprenda is doing is running the proxy with a different config, and it will run the proxy with a different config. And there's very clearly good use cases for having a hybrid, Windows Linux cluster. And so I think we're going to want to have something like that.
But there's a whole nother dimension of sort of configurability here, and it definitely we're going to be digging deep into a lot of the component config stuff and the way that the kubelet is being configured, and make sure that we're lining up there.
The other question was with regards to cloud provider. Like, does kubeadmin support or detect cloud provider right now?
There is an undocumented cloud provider flag on kubeadmin init. The reason it isn't documented yet is that I didn't know enough about how to make various cloud providers work to document it well. So we could really do with some help with that.
Okay.
So it does, I think it configures the controller manager with the cloud provider argument. I may be wrong about that, but it passes it through to something certainly. So it's there, it's not documented because we're not sure about how to make sure that people have a good experience with it yet. So please come and help out.
And I think there's an open question around sort of auto detection there, right? Like how fancy do we want to get about doing heuristic-y stuff? We're gonna just have to feel our way through that.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to take too much time. Thank you, Luke. That's awesome. The next is Paul with SIG-Service-Catalog, and we are just for time check. We're about 10:33, so we're moving along.
Okay, well, I'll make this quick because I don't have a voluminous spreadsheet or a fancy presentation, unlike some other SIG leads that I know. For those of you that aren't familiar with SIG-Service-Catalog, SIG-Service-Catalog is about making the Cloud Foundry Service Broker API usable in Kubernetes. And what that API is an API that right now it's mostly SaaS providers that implement it. The value out of this API is it gives those SaaS providers a way to expose their services for use within Cloud Foundry, and we want to bring that availability of that service broker-based ecosystem to Kubernetes, and then also make it easy for you as a Kubernetes user to run your own service broker so that you can participate in that ecosystem too. So right now, what we're kind of talking about in the SIG is determining the scope of what we want to do for our initial milestone. And we've pared that down to, we're going to get probably a big black cat walking into frame here in a second, so just be ready. What we pared that down to is, sorry, he's a monster, is basically just the use cases of consuming a service broker and running your own. There was some discussion about should we also have a use case for implementing white box services where as opposed to like a typical SaaS use case, you'd actually have different resources created in your Kubernetes namespace. So you could get MySQL in your own namespace from a template. The group kind of kicked that one out as something that we're interested in, but it's not part of a minimum viable product. So vis-a-vis 1.5, I think unlike the other two SIGs that you just heard from, we're mostly interested in building something that runs on top of 1.5. And to elaborate just a tiny bit more on that, I think long-term, we all agree that this is an instance of something that we'd like to see be a separate API server, be federated with the main API, and perhaps even have a binary extension to kubectl, which are all things that we want to do to make it easy for folks to build. Thank you, Joe. That's, you know, my applause meter has been pretty low recently, so that's good. These are all things that we want to do to make it easy for the community to build out things like this. So right now, the main tension in the group is between expediency and making a longer term investment. So if you have an opinion on this subject, I encourage you to join us at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time on Mondays. And I'll post a link to the community page for this, which has all the other links that you can follow. So I won't speculate on 1.5 items that will actually get into main Kubernetes in 1.5 because we haven't scoped yet. But that's where we're at, and that's where we're going. Thanks a bunch.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. And I just, you know, and the applause there, I want to just be clear. I'm applauding for the idea of us, you know, making sure we prove out the extension mechanisms so that we can build really interesting things on top of Kubernetes without having to start working at the, you know, at the core, right? And this definitely imports that whole sort of what's core, what's not core discussion. I'm not gonna, let's not rat hole now, but that's that was my response there. Are there any other comments or questions for Paul? No? All right. Well, thank you, Paul. Awesome. So Ihor, feature status just across 1.5 plan. Oh, wait, no. Let me make sure I'm not one off.
1.5, yeah.
Okay, so Ihor, do you want to go over real quick where you're seeing things?
Well, so that will be like on the brief update because we don't have any like real big actual status of the features because we don't have only started in 1.5 iteration. So this link provides you with a table where I have collected all the actual links for 1.5 release from our features repo. So as you remember, I have prepared a similar spreadsheet for 1.4 release where we have collected all the actual features that had to be included and were included into 1.4 release. They were in the different statuses, and like this spreadsheet collects also the new features that are marked with milestone 1.5. This is like a very early draft, but I'm expecting from the feature owners and some other interested people to fill it and provide with the actual status. Also, if someone has any new features ideas, please go ahead and prepare the new issue, like the new feature issue in the features repo and start working on that. So that's all from me.
Awesome, thank you. So just to be clear, if you want to have something show up in the release notes for 1.5, it starts with this spreadsheet here, and it starts with putting stuff in the features repo.
Yeah, it starts from the features repo. It starts from putting putting this feature here into the spreadsheet and commenting it with your list links and with the actual doc to your feature.
So yeah, no, thank you for doing the good work of organizing this stuff. I think it's going to give us a lot more clarity around the themes of 1.5 as it develops and where things are at and where the efforts are going and where all the exciting stuff is. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any questions on that? No? All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Actually, since somebody
there was a question
about features repo versus spreadsheet, and since I was the last doofus who went through this exercise, I will say again, I really appreciate the features repo, and I do think that's where all of our automated tools should be pointed at. What I ran into was we as humans did not use the feature repo effectively. It was a very noisy mess, and the only way I had anything clean to look at was thanks to Ihor's wonderful, ongoing, long manual efforts. I think we now have a bit of time ahead of us to discuss during the retrospective coming up about how we could more effectively use the the features repo and how we might think about timeline-wise, sort of summarizing what's going to go into the release a little bit earlier to help give people a heads up of like what they should anticipate for beta testing and whatnot. Fair?
No, that sounds great to me. And I assume as part of that retrospective is looking to see how we can automate Ihor out of a job a little bit here so he can do other things.
Yeah, it would be great. So I'm second in Aaron's search regarding that. So at the current moment, we were able to collect that in a manual way, but it would be great if we will automate it in some way. Because feature repo provides like the source for all your feature initiatives, but we have to collect it in some specific way in one single document or on one single page or something like that.
Okay, and then in short run, what about just linking the spreadsheet publicly? You know, it's in the notes here. Josh, what did you have in mind in terms of making it more?
Well, I can understand this question if it is possible to link this spreadsheet somewhere to their to GitHub, for example, or some public source. Yeah, I will do that. So yeah.
So, okay,
that's
so maybe a readme in the repo. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's definitely room for somebody to build a tool that sort of scrapes some stuff from the features repo and populates a spreadsheet, and that's at least a good starting point for automating some of this. But I think let's leave that for the retrospective, perhaps. All right, very cool. Okay, let's see, and then the next one is Sally Ross talking about SIG-autoscaling and SIG-instrumentation and the future of monitoring. So getting a quick update there.
All right. So sadly, I do not even have a cat to spice up my presentation, but we have started in SIG-autoscaling and SIG-instrumentation, kind of discussing a vision for the overall future of the Kubernetes monitoring architecture. And how we want that to look and what components we want to be replaceable, and how we want the APIs and the interaction to look there. We haven't quite finalized anything yet, but we're hoping to get some of the initial work started in 1.5. I will post a link to the kind of the vision document as we're discussing on it. We have some questions that we need to discuss around SIG API machinery. But if you're interested, attend the next SIG-autoscaling and SIG-instrumentation meetings.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Any questions or comments there real quick? All right. Thank you, Sally. Okay, and then we have a SIG update just in general. Fabiano is going to be talking about SIG-CLI and sort of an announcement that, hey, this is a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Fabiano. I'm an engineer at Red Hat OpenShift. I've been working with our CLI tools for quite some time now, and most recently kubectl. And we just created a new SIG-CLI, which I'm going to be facilitating together with Philip from Google and Tony Addo. So basically, we had this idea of creating a new SIG specifically for discussing things around the command line tools for Kubernetes. So things like the kubectl architecture, what we have today, and how we keep kubectl evolving, making it more extensible, so things like that, and discussing things like things like CLI conventions that we might adopt and document, how we keep our conciseness, between all the tools we have under kubectl today. And not only that, things in terms of the architecture of command line tools, but also how we keep our, for example, POSIX compliance, and how we look good in terms of user experience, usability for our end users, developers, and DevOps, those kind of stuff. So we're still discussing the exact boundaries of this new SIG. So it's pretty clear that in terms of code, it's what's under the kubectl package, but what exactly are our boundaries and the scope of our work is still under this discussion. So as soon as we have something, we are going to update the community repo with more information. So things like what's our relationship with other tools, tools other than kubectl specifically, so the other command line tools we have, so that kind of stuff. So basically, we are right now finding a time for our meetings. It's going to happen every 2 weeks. So probably starting the next week on Wednesday. It's not already defined, the exact time, but we are discussing that in the mailing list. So by the way, there is now a Kubernetes SIG-CLI mailing list that we might maybe interested in joining, and a new SIG-CLI Slack channel. So that's it. So if you're interested in command line tools, so please get involved. We're available for questions, ideas, concerns. I'm not sure if Phillips or Tony are here now, but if you are, do you have anything else to add? Otherwise, that's all I got.
Well, I, for one, can say I'm really excited about this. I think, usability and sort of really looking at the continuing to evolve and improve and extend kube control is very exciting. So I'm gonna be tuning in personally. Anybody else have questions? No. All right. Thank you very much, Fabiano.
Thank you.
You're getting a bunch of +1s in the chat, so that's good. Good news. All right, so we have a little over 10 minutes left. There's a bunch of notices in the notes that I'm going to actually read through. First off, there is the first Kubernetes meetup in Austin, or Austin's first Kubernetes meetup, which is exciting. So if you are within driving distance of Austin, it would be great if you could go help out there and show your face and help build that community. KubeCon, the schedule has been posted. Things are looking very exciting. I want to shout out to the folks who've been putting that together. That's a lot of time to actually pull together those CFPs and go through them and let everybody know. It's a lot of work. There is a discount code for contributors in the notes if you want to get 20% off for both corporate and individual registrations. Okay, so question is, okay, who's running the Austin Kubernetes users group? I don't know. There's a link from the notes, and so I'm assuming that there is some answer behind that link, Josh. The next question is, any word on KubeCon Lightning Talk CFPs? I saw something. I'm not super involved in that, but let me do a quick.
I can briefly update on that. So Lightning Talks CFP has been already closed, but CNCF and some volunteers from the KubeCon committees are working on that, and we are going to provide some results very soon. So we don't have any final word on that, but stay tuned, please.
Okay, so that is happening.
Yes.
CFPs are closed. All right, and then let's see. So Diane here has in the chat, the OpenShift community is hosting a prequel to KubeCon on November 7th in Seattle, and with a link there. Let's see. So yeah, so we'll make sure that gets copied into the notes. Thank you, Diane. And then, yes, lightning talks are closed. Okay, so let's see. So also around KubeCon, there's the Kubernetes Developer Summit. There is a lottery to attend and to submit talkets and sort of more information about sort of how that's going to be structured. All that information is in the notes. And so if you're going to be in town, please, please take a look at that as appropriate. Anyone interested in being a mentor for Outreachy or Google Summer of Code? I'm not familiar with Outreachy myself, but if you're interested, go ahead and contact Sarah. And oh, somebody got the note. Okay, yeah, go contact Sarah and let her know. I think it's a great opportunity to help grow our community and you know, start meeting some new folks and mentoring them, and really, really cool stuff there. And then also there will be a new community calendar invite coming, so stay tuned there. Managing Google Calendar with a group this large is always a little bit of a challenge, and so there's a certain amount of scorch it and restart it to sort of clean things up that happens every once in a while. So stay tuned for that. Any other announcement or notes that people would like to share? Okay, oh, here's a question. Okay, so let's see. Any chance the KubeCon sessions will be live streamed or recorded and uploaded? I don't know. Does anybody here know? I think that may be something that we can ask Sarah next week and she can actually get the answer for. Okay, and then, so Josh is asking, how do we get the invite list? How do we get on the invite list? Is this for the developer summit, I assume, that Josh is asking about? There is a lottery link to try and keep it somewhat limited. There's a link where you can submit your name and oh, for this meeting. How do we get for this meeting? I don't know. It was a manual process for Sarah. Hopefully she'll find a way to automate that.
I think it says in the meeting notes right up top, if you join the Kubernetes community video chat Google group, that should get you an invite.
I think there was something like where it topped out after a certain number of people, like Calendar just gave up, you know, just threw up its hands and said, I can't deal with this. So maybe that's one of the things that Sarah's helping to fix. So yes. But I hear you, Josh. That's it's useful to have this automatically updated on your calendar. Let's see. So yeah, the question: will KubeCon sessions be live streamed? I don't know. I'll talk to Sarah and make sure that we get an answer there and get the on the record answer for next week. Let's see. Caleb says owners files update next week. Emails are out and response looks overwhelmingly positive. So this is very exciting, moving towards a more automated sort of who's responsible for what thing and expanding the set of reviewers and building out some official expectations around what it takes to actually be on that list. So that's very, very exciting. It's going to be one of the ways that we're going to scale the community and make sure that we have ways to actually get involved early and then grow their responsibilities over time. So it's very, very exciting around that. And thank you for helping there, Caleb. Yeah, so any other announcements or notes that folks would like to share? If not, I will say that we can end a few minutes early. Going once, going twice. Oh wait, the Seattle, looks like the extra lightning. Okay, so there's some question around the Kubernetes meetup in the notes. I'm not quite sure. Some talks might have been swapped out for other speakers. So that's in the chat line there. Okay.
Someone named Joe Betta is on the schedule.
All right. Well, thank you, Ryan. So we'll dig into that. All right. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll talk to everyone later. Thank you.
Thanks for running it, Joe. Great job.
I'm no Sarah, but I do what I can.
Yeah, thanks a lot for running.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks all.